Okay, you're good to go.
I'd like to call to order the September 8th, 2020 meeting of the Edina Park and Rec Commission. Janet, will you do a roll call, please?
Chairitis, I'll do roll calls this evening.
Yes. Okay.
Janet will continue to do that. And Chairitis, if you could mute quick, I think that would help. I'm getting some feedback. So. All right, and we'll use this roll call throughout the evening when we do take votes. So I believe we have several of those this evening. So we'll start with Commissioner Good.
Here.
Commissioner Miller.
Looks like you're still on mute, Mike. There you go.
Here. Got it. Here.
Commissioner Struther. Commissioner Willett. Commissioner Mork. Commissioner Nalowski.
Here.
Thank you, Will. I'll get better at that name, just so you know. Commissioner McCauley.
Here.
Commissioner Sorum. Commissioner Darlene.
Here.
Commissioner Itis.
Here.
Commissioner Daskich.
Here.
The roll's been taken.
Next item.
Perry, you missed me on the roll call.
I apologize, Commissioner Nelson. We've got you in on the meeting then.
Thank you.
Item 3, I'd ask for a motion and a second for the approval of the meeting agenda then, please.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
I believe we have
There's no roll call.
a motion
There's
for
no roll
Good
call
and
for
a
that.
second from Miller. I will call the roll, Chair. Commissioner Good.
Aye.
Commissioner Miller.
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson.
Aye.
Commissioner McCauley.
Aye.
Commissioner Darlene.
Aye.
Commissioner Itis.
Aye.
Commissioner Daskich.
Aye.
So that motion carries for your approval of your meeting agenda this evening.
Next item, number 4, ask for a motion and a second on the approval of the meeting minutes from last month.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
Chair, I believe that was a motion by Commissioner McCauley and a second by Commissioner Nelson. I will call the roll then. Commissioner Good.
Aye.
Commissioner Miller.
Aye.
Commissioner Struther. Sorry, Commissioner Nelson. Commissioner Willett has joined the meeting. Commissioner Willett, we are currently voting on the approval of the minutes. We'll let Commissioner Willett get settled. Commissioner McCauley.
Aye.
Commissioner Darlene.
Aye.
Commissioner Itis.
Aye.
And Commissioner Daskich.
Aye.
Thank you all, though. This evening, Chair and Commissioners, I did want to introduce, we had student commissioner appointments that occurred between your last meeting. This is a unique situation due to kind of the COVID-19 pandemic. Student commissioner interviews were handled a little bit differently. They were conducted by members of the council, and they had such wonderful candidates this year. And knowing that we are in a virtual world, they did expand the rosters for student commissioners this year. Well, typically on an annual basis, you have 2 student commissioners. For the upcoming, basically the school year of your Parks Commission, we will have 3. 2 of those commissioners are not able to attend this evening, but Student Commissioner Will Nalowski is with us this evening. So we wanted to do a special recognition of his first meeting with us. And with that, I'd ask Will to maybe introduce himself to the rest of the commission and maybe why he wanted to serve as a student commissioner this year.
Hi, I'm Will Nalowski. I'm going to be a junior at Edina High School next year. I wanted to serve on this commission because I've grown up with the parks a lot and participated in them. I just thought it's a very influential way of how to reach the community and how to help everyone. And also Jack Sorum, he's having technical difficulties, but he's trying to get on.
Welcome, Will.
I guess we are in a virtual world, Will, if you know that Jack's having technical difficulties. Maybe through this meeting, I'll ask Janet if she could resend that link to Student Commissioner Sorum, and maybe he'll be able to join us. But thank you, Will. Just so the commissioners are reminded, or any of the members of the public, student commissioners participate in all of our meetings, all of our activities. The only difference is they do not vote on topics. As I told the student commissioners during orientation, their input is extremely valuable. We want to hear their opinion, especially when it comes to matters before the Parks Commission, as they bring a unique perspective that we are looking for. So welcome to Will and the other commissioners. So as they join, we will ensure that they are introduced to you this evening. So that was the special recognition chairitis that we wanted to cover quickly this evening.
Item 6, reports and recommendations, and Director, you are up on the next item. Approval of the 2019 work plan recommendations.
Thank you again, Chairitis. Just wanted to draw commissioners' attentions to the items in their packet for this evening. We've got basically a lot of work plan initiatives to go over. For 2019, a lot of work has already been completed on that work plan. There were a few outstanding items that of the last meeting we had down as draft. However, we wanted to get that information, especially any of those recommendations, to the City Council kind of as one unit. So I did add in the final updated version of your 2019 plan in the packet, just to verify if any of the commissioners had a chance to review any of that work. If you had any recommended changes or wording that we could make to I believe you had, just verifying, 7 initiatives for 2019. Several of them you've already taken action on, so just to verify that any of the other ones can go forward. Your first initiative was a cross-commission committee with the Human Rights and Relations Commission about naming of a public facility in the Grandview area after the BC and Ellen Yancey family. You did complete that initiative, so that one I think is pretty solid, as you've already voted on that one. The second initiative was one that was continued to 2020, and that was serving on a cross-commission committee in partnership with the HRRC to identify barriers of participation for members of a community of color. So that one was a 2019 plan. That one was continued onto your 2020 work plan and revised a little bit there. The third one, you did take action on this one as well, and that was to look with another commission, the Transportation Commission, to develop a plan on the grand rounds of Edina, including wayfinding. You did review that. The transportation planner for the city of Edina came to the commission and gave a presentation. And based on that, you did have a recommendation and some feedback for the commission to consider on item 3, or initiative 3, excuse me. Initiative number 4, that was a study and report to the city council on fields, courts, and rink capacity and utilization data. You did finalize a report and a rationale for your report. Just wanted to make sure the full commission did see that based on the last meeting, and if there were any questions on the initiative that we can bring forward. Your initiative 5 was to look at alternate funding options. This was an item that the work group initiative did review. They kind of looked into some sponsorship and marketing firms to evaluate the assets of our Edina Park facilities. That one got a little bit of a boost that was transferred into the 2020 work plan. And I think that'll probably be a topic of your ongoing conversations on alternate funding models. So just wanted to make sure you're comfortable with the wording on initiative 5, as that's a study and report. Initiative 6 was a review and comment on the race and equity policy statement developed by city staff. That review and comment did occur, so that recommendation and rationale is in your packet. And then your final initiative for 2019 was to serve on another cross-commission committee to complete requirements for Edina to receive the AARP designation. That was in partnership with the Community Health Commission. And again, your recommendation and rationale is in there. That memo, because it was led by the Health Commission, was forwarded on to the City Council. So I just wanted to draw your attention. Those were kind of the summary 2019 initiatives we had in your packet. We would, as staff, appreciate just a final motion in a second, or any alterations you had to any of the wording or comments. And then we will bring that forward to the City Council for consideration on each one. Some of those were actions, some of those are report, those were recommendations. So staff would finalize bringing those forward for council consideration.
Director, you'd like to have a motion then to approve basically what you said in the agenda, the work plan recommendation? Is that the wording that you're looking for?
Yeah, that's correct, Chair. Unless someone had any recommendations to the 2019 wording, we could update that, and then a motion to send that on to council would be fantastic.
So, Perry, I would just say that I'll send you after the meeting for initiative 5. I'll just send you after the meeting just a better explanation of what we did. So you can add that in, just bulleted points of what we considered and what we're considering going forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Miller. And I think that wouldn't, because that's only a study and report, I think probably the rest of the commissioners would be fine with whatever wording we could slip in there.
So considering the changes Commissioner Miller will be adding, I would motion that the staff accept it, finalize it, and pass the recommendation along to City Council.
I'll second.
Any additional comments? Otherwise, Chair, I can call a roll. Commissioner Good?
Aye.
Commissioner Miller?
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson?
Aye.
Commissioner Willett?
Aye.
Commissioner McCauley?
Aye.
Commissioner Darlene?
Aye.
Commissioner Itis?
Aye.
And Commissioner Doskich?
Aye.
with that, Commissioner Itis, the next item up is your 2020 work plan, and that is to provide any updates. And I think another appropriate thing to do would be maybe to discuss, well, since Will's the only student commissioner on this evening, how we would like to go about adding in some of the student commissioners to finalize out the 2020 plan. Or in lack of additional student commissioners, staff could reach out to them and place them onto work group initiatives once we can kind of further gauge their preference and kind of complete out that roster for those work group teams for each initiative.
Perry?
I can hear you now, Chair Itis.
Yeah. Would you like the lead person perhaps on each initiative to just make a comment? Would that be helpful?
I think that would be helpful. I can provide some comments for Commissioner McCauley. That's a unique work group for initiative number 1. You are still in kind of the period of waiting for information to review from additional areas. The first is on the flood risk reduction strategy and the climate action plan. The one item of note is the assistant city engineer gave a presentation at the last study session on the morning side flood reduction task force that's going on. I'm waiting for kind of those materials, the presentation deck that they did. I will forward that out to those 3 commissioners and whatever student commissioner is then assigned to that. So initiative number 1 is still off the hook for now on any work there. Again, waiting for information from other city departments. So for number 1,
Do you have any kind of a timeline receipt of that?
Commissioner McCauley, I hope to have the work from the last study session within the next couple of days that I can get out to you. I don't have a strong timeline on the climate action plan. The city's environmental resource coordinator position is vacant right now. So on that one, I'm not exactly sure on how that work item is progressing through the department that resides in the absence of a staff member right now. But I will reach out and get an update for you.
All right, thank you.
Chair Itis, I'll kind of keep going too, since Commissioner Struther is not with us this evening. That is the item. Last meeting, we talked about converting that work initiative into a staff-led, would create the plan for a review and comment from the commissions. That is reflective in your 2021 draft plan for consideration later. So for initiative number 2, again, we're kind of converting that one, and we will be in contact with Commissioner Struther when we have that information available from Park and Rec staff and Race and Equity staff. So that kind of covers the first 2 of those initiatives.
I can take the next 2 as they're mine. Actually, if you look at them, the way they're written, they number 4 kind of leads to number 3. So I'll just start with number 4 backwards. So number 4 was creating some form of a prioritization of how we're going to actually accept projects in terms of when we're looking for money and we don't know how to prioritize what projects we're going to do, is creating some form of definitions and meaning behind how we prioritize. So if you want to be involved in this project, it would be helping us understand how we prioritize deciding what we do on a project. The current state of it is we created a rough draft of the criteria, and then we forwarded it to different liaisons within the staff to see if they had any feedback, and I believe we're still waiting for feedback. And Perry, we're getting that feedback for us. Is there anything else you want to add there?
just Commissioner Nelson, you are correct. The items that the work group initiative did create, I did forward on to the two staff liaisons for Human Rights and Relations Commission and the Energy and the Environment Commission. They have those and are reviewing, and I haven't got any feedback yet, but I'll reach out again to see if there's a timeline on what they can present back to you. I know this was one that was kind of the priority for the group for the Works Commission and for the entire Parks Commission, kind of based on that feedback from the City Council. So we will definitely try to keep this one moving.
Will, just to kind of go over this, and number 3, and so we just mentioned 4 kind of leads into 3, but is really creating an approach of how we want to be proactive and connecting with different groups, not just, but also including sports groups, underprivileged areas or underserved areas in the community, how we can be proactive in connecting, which I think none of us knew what this is going to look like in 2020, obviously, but I think it's even more important than ever before, as we have to not only be proactive, but be creative in how we reach out and make sure we're connecting the importance of having parks and connections with people through COVID and mental health and all the above within this. So it's not such an important initiative, but a lot of it's going to come through how we can be creative as well as proactive and in that building of a community. And that would be my 2.
Mike, do you have something on 5, please? Or Pat? Or Greg?
I do not. I do not believe we have met on this in the last couple months.
Yeah, my only question on 5 was we listed the local option sales tax, a very unfortunate but perhaps appropriate acronym, as one of our funding sources, and I just wonder whether that's really our only option, or if we have some other options, because that one obviously did not make any progress this year.
Commissioners, I think numbers 5 and number 6 are very similar. For those watching, the Braemar Park Master Plan and the Fred Richard Master Plans were two master plans the Parks Commission spent a lot of time working on. However, they are currently unscheduled and unfunded. So earlier in the season, staff did pursue the local option sales tax. However, due to the limited legislative session here at the state that was cut short, we never really got resolution on whether a lost funding mechanism was going to go forward or not. I think as staff, at least for the Fred Richards, there are other alternate funding sources out there. However, they would require some in-kind contribution. So I think as you looked at how these alternate funding models can kind of progress maybe into what you're considering for 2021, that might give you a better list of kind of that a la carte menu of could we do A, B, or C for these. And I think, we did, it's not like we put all of our eggs in the lost basket, but that was kind of the shot of the year. And in absence of doing a capital plan for, as Edina does it every other year, that was kind of the option we pursued at that time. So really, for 2020, we're kind of stuck in that realm of not a lot's going to fall out of the sky. And I won't go to Greg's acronym, but it is pretty apt that maybe we've lost about 6 months on working this with absence of a CIP funding source and absence of any resolution, I guess you could say, on what that proposal was at the state capitol. So if we want to pursue that again, we'll have to start over from scratch. That when that session ended, our resolution kind of was with that as well. So we would have to start from scratch as we head into the next legislative session, if that's what we want to pursue again as one option.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, Barry.
Perry, on 6, can you tell us a little bit about the development that's going on the north side, which abuts our Fred Richards, or the lack of development, and how that might change the master plan?
Thank you, Chair. Part of the master plan was the development on the north side of 77th, the Pentagon Park area. When the master plan was developed a few years ago, that area was under serious consideration for redevelopment. To the point of that redevelopment and any captured park dedication fees were going to go to fund that the master plan for Fred Richards. That development is not going forward. The property owner, I believe, looked at several different partners, never really found one that they could kind of share visions with. Therefore, they have reinvested in portions of their facilities on the south side of Fred Richards, north side of 77th. So while that does mean, again, we're looking at alternates to funding the Fred Richards master plan, it also, if you recall, the main aspect of entering into the new Fred Richards Park on the master plan showed a new entrance drive and new access park from 77th going north, rather than kind of coming in off of the east side over by Park Lawn. So that will be one aspect of the master plan that we will have to give some thought to once we kind of gather some funding about how we want to approach creating a better entrance into what we're considering the Fred Richards Park master plan, because that area is going to be a conflict if it doesn't redevelop for what the vision was pairing those two sites together.
On 7, Greg, I know you've done some great comments at this point right before the last few weeks. Anything more that you wanted to add?
Nothing too much additional yet, Chair. Initiative 7 was study and report on the strategic goal of 15% of Edina land dedicated to parks and green spaces. So we've identified that acreage. We've had some discussion about looking at parks spread across the different quadrants in Edina, and recently Perry provided us with some input on some data from the NRPA, National Recreation and Parks Association, around some benchmark data. So we expect to have a meeting. I'll try to set one up here mid this month that we can have a little further discussion around how do we want to take this information and begin to layer on some things above and beyond just the 15% threshold that we seem to have achieved and are maintaining at the moment, and try to identify some other things that would be meaningful both operationally and strategically. And so I expect that's the direction that we'll head in the next month or so to come up with an end result for this initiative.
And for some of the other commissioners listening, I think it's unique. We're kind of looking at almost population ratios per amenity and kind of comparing that not just of kind of on a national level, but actually cities in relatively a comparative size to Edina. So rather than just saying you should have 10 amenities per 1,000 residents, we're actually kind of looking at, you know, what is that proper ratio? Are we underserved in some of the amenities, and are we at a quality amount for Edina? I think one of the things we talked about is just because we would be over doesn't necessarily mean we're going to try to cut back on something. The goal of this is to really look at, are we adequately served and not take anything away? I think not a lot of communities of our size have the winter use of an outdoor hockey amenities at their disposal, or the valued interest in them. So when we look at some of our amenities, Edina is going to be high on ice, especially winter outdoor. We just want to make sure everyone knows we're not going to be looking at taking that away, but just do we have the right ratio and are we adequately served? I think as we look at future programming of the system in outer years, I think it'll be beneficial to say, how well are we served in this area? So we can kind of really make some informed decisions. Should we add, or are we good in certain areas? Or as Commissioner Good said, even by quadrant, do we have enough of everything in each quadrant, let alone trying to look at it neighborhood by neighborhood, but at least we can kind of define, are we adequately served in each quadrant? So it's kind of, if you like numbers and you like statistics and you like ratios, it's a fun exercise.
Any comments by anybody else on any of the items, or we can move ahead? Item P under 6. If everybody has the cover sheet kind of, or the agenda page, it looks like this. We should just, if we haven't spent some time looking at it, there's 3 items. The action requested, certainly the introduction. It's an important item for us this evening. I think 6 items, the little bullet points or talking points, as we go through these initiatives for 2021, we should keep in mind, what type it is, who would like to be the lead, and certainly who'd like to be a member of these proposed 4. The deliverables at some point during the progress, either through ourselves or to third parties. A target completion date. If there's dollar amounts involved, a budget, we should make a guesstimate about that. And initiatives, we should look at these proposed 4 items, and they're listed 1 to 4, but I think we have some flexibility in prioritizing these ourselves tonight. So as we go through these, if commissioners have a particular interest in these items, they should make that known. Any comments before we start, Perry?
Yes, Chair. I think the only one too is if other commissioners had ideas for additional initiatives, that is also available tonight. Again, this is your commission work plan. Staff is here to facilitate that. Obviously, we play a role in helping you deliver this work plan, but these are kind of ideas that were generated, and if there are additional initiatives, this is the perfect time for that discussion, Chair.
I don't know if you're looking to go one by one, but I would, looking at, I think it's number 2 on the new, which is basically a continuation of the current 2020 number 4. It actually is actually number 3. I think, guess part of my question today first is, how are we going to utilize the information from number 4 once we get the feedback from the rest of the staff? How are we going to implement that into our initiative? Because that was kind of the plan, was to have a prioritization that we could use to look at some of these things. So I guess that's part of my question. And then I would say that because we're just starting number 3, I would be happy to continue on with the same group, or I guess I'd say I'd be happy to lead it as well, since we haven't really scratched the surface on that one yet. So if that'd be my feedback.
Chair, we've got you on mute, just so you know.
That better?
Yep.
if it's possible, can we just go through them as we said, you know, they're only by number, but they're not in order of priority at this point. They just have a number attached. So on one, again, we look at the determination, is this a project, is it ongoing, or is it just a singular event? Again, we say review and comment on the plan developed by us and the race and equity staff to identify barriers. Is there any item of, well, discussion or interest? Certainly what I'm looking for is, you know, some of the commissioners to say, yes, I have an interest in this. Certainly if somebody would like to lead this initiative, or if we don't think that it's one that's one that we'd like to do in 2021.
Chair, I guess I'll just to confirm, this is we're tweaking the item on your 2020 plan and putting on your 2021 plan as proposed. The difference is staff, Park and Recreation staff and the Race and Equity staff would develop something for you to review and comment on. So that's kind of the big change from where it is now. There's been a little bit of a challenge of coordinating between the two commissions for developing that. And we'd like to just take that out of the aspect. Staff will develop a plan for review by both commissions, and then we'd need commission implementation. So when it kind of comes to initiative type, it's a starts with a kind of a project and it ends with an event. So it would be reviewing, are we doing the project correctly with gathering the input template? And then we have to actually go out and do it. So it's kind of a two-phase one. Staff will take care of the first phase, let you comment on it, and then we have to actually do an event later. And this is one that was in the city's race and equity task force recommendations. So I would imagine that the city council will want to see this one through completion.
When is the completion date expected, Barry?
Well, I think we wouldn't probably be doing a lot of input right now based on our restricted kind of guidelines of gathering. Similar to current year initiative 3, it's a little bit of a challenge to go out and connect with folks. So I would imagine we'll have to determine when we can actually go out and try to connect with people, depending on how the restrictions around the pandemic go. If I were to say, I would give yourself enough leeway, and I would just say December of 21 for a target completion date, and give yourself the flexibility to take the time to review and comment of what staff brings forward, and then have the flexibility to implement. Maybe it might be, you know, hopefully at maybe 4th of July event or at open streets, you might be able to hit a few markers along the year to get some things in for that information gathering to kind of complete this one. So I would give yourself a target completion date of the end of 21.
Perhaps I just thought, why don't we go all through all of them before we ask for people that have an interest? Any other comments on number 1 before we go to the next initiative? The second one. We're revisiting certainly something in this year's work plan, the connectivity with our neighborhood. The verbiage might be a little bit different, but I think it's pretty much the same as we had the one that was in this year's work plan. Any comments by any of the other commissioners on this?
Chair, I'll just mention too a little bit on initiative number 2. I think that was also, a little bit about defining your CAP, but it was a little bit as well about how do we better connect with neighborhood groups, athletic associations, kind of show them what the commission work does, what the department work is, to really kind of have a true sense of what we do. I know a number of you over the last year have talked to different groups within the community, whether that be places where you live or where you are members of an association, et cetera. And this would kind of further that piece of it is actually to go out and implement it. So some of the deliverable ideas we had of, is this a presentation deck or some informational items that we can provide to commissioners. So we're all kind of talking off the same fact sheet, the same script, the same information for when people go out and do connect. For some, it might be more of an elementary presentation of we have X amount of parks and X amount of acreage, but others it might be more of here's how we're funded, here's how this enterprise works, et cetera. So the information might vary depending on the audience, but part of this was really to kind of help also gather information that you as commissioners wanted to be able to take out into the community to connect with folks. And I believe the 2020 plan is kind of a review and decide, so that allows you as commissioners to really kind of determine what level of information you want to gather and be able to take out into the community.
Do we have a budget, or how about resources that we might need to accomplish this?
Well, since the 2020 plan was to kind of help create and draft that, 2021 would be where we would need to determine is there a need for that. When I kind of look at, is it some marketing materials that's pretty de minimis, on a level of expense. So that's most likely, if it kind of limits to that, it's something that we could handle within our department operating. If you each wanted laptops and projectors to go out there, that's a different story. But I think you're probably talking about, some infographics, presentations, something you can maybe leave with audiences. Depending on what level and quantity that is, I'm sure we could probably handle that. It wouldn't add up too much, but if that's what the commission's thinking, we would then budget for that within our department.
Thanks. Thank you. Any other comments or questions before we go to the next one? The next one has a lot of similarities, certainly, to the work's been done briefly on the CIP this year.
Please enter your remote access code.
Is that you or me? Any comments on the initiative about funding? I know we've got 2 or 3 groups, the CIP work and the 2 master plans, and this probably has a substantial need, so to speak, for this item, both in terms of people and time.
Yeah, Rick, as I look at this, we have a lot of groundwork to lay. I see this as more long-term than prioritizing CIP or possible funds that might be available from buildings being paid for. Sorry, I'm not exactly sure of the term for that. But so I see this as more of a long-term building effort within the community. While it impacts those other areas, it's not going to be right away.
I certainly agree. I mean, as you and I've met a couple of times, there's been a couple ideas that have been tossed out, which would require some legal issues perhaps to get implemented. But, you know, and I've certainly talked to the Minneapolis people for parks, and I've done a little investigative work. Rochester has a park foundation. So those items are not quick fixes, so to speak, for us, but would require some time and some staff time, certainly, for direction. But so this would probably be an item, if I hear Eileen a little bit, when people volunteer for this initiative, when they do, it's probably going to be certainly more than one term of commitment.
Also, and I think that we need to set the priorities for the CIP so that as we're talking to people about the foundation, we can better define exactly what we're trying to do, updating the parks in general, and then even specifically by neighborhood as we go forward. So we're going to need that other work, I think, done to be supportive of the alternative funding work.
Thanks, Eileen. Any other comments about this particular one, or? Go ahead.
I think, Chair, just a staff comment is I think, you know, on this one, the council would probably really want to see that a little bit about what we discussed about the 2020 plan of, you know, for the alternate funding, we pursued this and researched that. I think it's kind of really coming up with that, basically what tools are in the toolbox that you could utilize and how likely could they occur. You know, whether that's, you know, the local option sales tax versus a referendum versus a foundation, sponsorship and marketing, really kind of going through of where are all the areas of need, as you've indicated, you know, the CIP priorities versus what are all these mechanisms and which ones really work for kind of that level of investment. So I think from a staff perspective, it's exciting because it kind of branches out to, you know, a recommendation of the council say, these are things that could and should be pursued to kind of help for that alternate funding mechanism. So I think you're right. The idea generation is one thing about what could be used, and then the implementation, you know, that could take a while.
Thank you. Any other comments? The last one that was in the packet, we had it as number 4, but assist in categorizing underutilized amenities or areas. I think some of this personally, as we go through, you know, these are so interrelated. I mean, when we hear back from the communities, once we re-engage them, you know, we're going to hear things back. Part of it, I think, is our work and just observation. You know, I happen to be over across the street at Lewis this afternoon and with 3 little kids, and they said, geez, can we get a new playground? You know, so I think, you know, underutilized, under-identified perhaps. So this one, I think, is something that's very important as well. Any comments by commissioners, please?
I'll only add from a staff perspective, this is in our strategic plan as an action item. Strategy 2.2.1. So if you're wondering kind of where that came from, it is in our strategic plan.
The only comment I have is just from our discussions that we had with Perry Rick. The surprise to me that the Strackower neighborhood felt like their basketball courts weren't a good amenity for their neighborhood because people came from the outside and kind of dominated them like all day Saturday or Sunday. So that was an eye opener for me to hear that some of the neighborhoods felt that about their parks, that they weren't getting to use them because of adult leagues coming in and just monopolizing them. So I think that's something we have to look at, not just what the amenities are, but how do we make sure that the local residents in that neighborhood are actually able to take a benefit from them.
Thanks, Eileen. I think as important, these four things are listed, but I'm certainly interested in any other items that I think we should want to or be able to present to the council as part of our 2021 plan.
Yeah, Rick, this is Greg. The only thing that I would have potentially to add is I noticed in the in kind of the preamble to this, the introductory, it talked about initiative types, annual or ongoing initiatives that's on the work plan every year. And I just wonder if maybe in our parking lot or potentially a fifth initiative, as we do some of our work on metrics and benchmarking, and we certainly had that in our comprehensive plan as well, that maybe we could craft something that becomes an annual or an ongoing initiative around keeping up with our metrics and our benchmarking. And so that could be a potential fifth item that we might suggest to council.
That's good because, probably, certainly from the council's point of view, they perhaps or probably would ask, what form of measurement.
Yep.
From a park board, and that's good. You use the word ongoing. I think that's, very good.
Yeah, I agree with that. The word ongoing is important because of the situation that we're in, which is really, we don't know what we don't know. What will happen with the pandemic going forward, how that's going to impact our ability to work on some of these things. So I think we have to include some language along those lines that, as we're looking at metrics and benchmarks, we need to be cognizant that that is impacting our ability to meet strategic and comprehensive plan benchmarks and metrics.
Perry?
Chairitis and Commissioner Good, I was just looking through your the comprehensive plan, and there is a highlight area of, and I apologize, was recently approved. Again, I think we once thanked Commissioner Good for serving on the task force. I think we should do that again, of serving on the comprehensive guide plan task force. But it does have a highlight of be intentional in use of benchmarking to assess progress against our strategic objectives. So I think having an initiative around benchmarking that is annual or ongoing to continue to kind of measure and have those goals is appropriate.
So the suggestion is to have that as an initiative, not necessarily number 5, but just as a separate one. Any other comments on that? I think it's, I apologize to Greg for an oversight. We certainly didn't intend on getting it, but we'll figure out some wording. Director, should we get that wording to the commissioners before October 6th or whatever? on these since we're going to ask for a vote tonight?
Yes, Chair, I can send that out to members of the commission and then ask you to just reply back to me if you're comfortable with that. Otherwise, the highlight wording is, and I guess the initiative can be a little bit vague now. If you wanted to talk through some of the other pieces, we can refine that later of what you feel your deliverable might be. But the exact wording is be intentional in the use of benchmarking to assess progress against strategic objectives. So that's the wording from the comprehensive guide plan. I think you've kind of talked about, with the work of initiative number 7, maybe having some benchmarks come out of that. So it might be applying the work of initiative number 7 for this year, ongoing, and kind of revisiting that, as you progress through. Are we meeting those benchmarks? Are they still valid benchmarks? So kind of a review and a living evaluation of what those marks are would be, I think, what I'm kind of hearing a few of you say. Maybe I'm wrong, but
I think that makes sense, Perry.
Yeah. Is that good with you, Greg? That
Yes.
wording, kind of?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that makes sense as a good place.
Yeah. Why don't, Perry, if you want to write that up and then get to that to us would be great. Is it possible to vote tonight based on the presumed wording?
actually, if you give me a couple of seconds, I'll type it up and share my screen if you're comfortable with the wording.
Yeah.
And Rick, I don't know if you wanted to go as far as trying to get volunteers for some of the initiatives, but just to take a poke at a couple, if you're interested, I would certainly be willing to work on initiative number 4 and certainly number 5 that we were just crafting. And the other one that I'd have an interest in, I feel like maybe I'm on a session of Shark Tank here, but if I could convince Commissioner Darlene to co-lead, I'd be interested in number 2. I think we could utilize his connections across the athletic communities and would certainly be interested in being involved in how we get deeper engagement across the communities to understand where we're headed and how we serve the community.
Yeah, I can help with that one. I don't know if I want to lead with it, but I can help.
I'd do the same then. And maybe someone else will step up and lead it with us.
Is that 2, Matt? But we're calling 2, right?
Yeah.
Right, what we're currently calling initiative number 2.
Right.
And Rick, I'll keep pitching it. 3. The alternative funding.
I have a personal preference for 2 and 3, but we'll wait to see how those are filled up. But
This is Commissioner Doskotch. I have an interest in initiative 4.
Eileen, can you or Corin speak for Julie, you think?
Well, I mean, she's always been in the, didn't she work on something similar to number 1 last time? I'm happy.
Commissioner McCauley is correct. Commissioner Struthers was the only voting member on initiative number 1.
Yeah.
So she could probably use some assistance.
This is Member Miller. I'll be happy to help Julia with initiative number 1.
Any interest at this point?
On what, Rick?
On any of them? I'm asking Pat. I can't tell if he's muted or listening or.
Can I ask a quick question? I don't know what the right wording is, and maybe Perry is doing that, but like, why are there no initiatives on here specific to like the Braemar work plan or the Fred Richards? Are we trying to get away from that and try to have these kind of general encompassing initiative wording? I know that there is a large initiative around Braemar Park specific to some of the arena and dome amenities and things like that. So I'm just wondering, is that captured in here with this general wording, or do we need to be privy and we need to be recognizing in this document that we're going to have people specific to those work efforts?
I think part of the issue, and if I'm wrong, Rick, was that due to the funding of what they would take, that's why we're not probably being specific until we can come up with the funding alternatives. We can talk about those things, but if we can't pay for them, I don't know that we'd be spending our week.
Matt, so your question was the progress or inability to progress on the master plans for both those?
No, I'm just wondering if specific language needs to be in here. So initiative, say 5, 6, whatever that number is, that's specific to those parks. So, you know, in the past, we've had a thing about support or investigation around the Braemar park work plan. We've had stuff in here about Weber Woods. We've had stuff in here about Fred Richards. Some of these have fallen off, and I'm just wondering partly because of what Member Macaulay just said, but also is it potentially also stuff that's just being missed because we don't have information in this virtual world? And just what Member Good alluded to, I've heard that there is a Braemar plan that's potentially farther down the road, and do we need to be at the table? Does someone from this commission need to be at the table in those discussions, being a part of those conversations, advocating for things as we're going through? Because that would be the example. But it feels like we've used more general language in these 4 things, that each of them you could rationalize could be part of that Braemar conversation, but there's nothing specific to Braemar.
I think commissioners as staff, I understand exactly where you're coming from, Commissioner Darlene. What I would recommend in that sense is under the deliverable section, say, you know, whatever you think that deliverable might be, if you like the idea of having a menu of funding opportunities that could be applied to master plans such as Fred Richards and the Braemar Park and ongoing CIP items, I think that would be appropriate. I think what felt odd about the prior ones is that it was, you know, really pushing on 2 park master plans in non-CIP years. And it was completely about, you know, how would you fund this outside of the CIP at these extravagant amounts? So I think that's why maybe, you know, I would prefer a little bit of a general approach about what are all the alternates to funding, and then City Council, which ones could apply here to Braemar, to the Fred, to Weber Woods, to the rest of our unfunded lists. Because otherwise it does tend to say, you know, we're only working on Fred and Braemar and not anything else. So I would recommend to kind of maybe bridge that gap is to put in the deliverable areas, you know, this specifically includes the Fred and the Braemar.
Matt, you had mentioned something about if there's some activity on the Braemar Park, Was that something other than the master plan that was developed? Or
I don't know. What I know is that there's a master plan. There's been some stuff that's been executed. There's been some lighting. There's some other things. There's other conversations, and there's other things that are going on. And I don't know if we have had a seat in that conversation. There's indications, or I've heard that there is other progress being made, and that there might be work that's moving forward. Maybe it's being put together piecemeal or a la carte because it's fixing or repairing or replacing or upgrading an amenity that needs to be done. But kind of like I would say, using the example of the playground that was put in at Fred Richards. I was on part of the team that was working on the Fred Richards stuff. All of a sudden we got our packet and it said, we're putting in a new park playground at Fred Richards. If we are as a group then saying this is how we're going to work, which is totally fine, and we don't need to have something for Braemar, but I feel like this commission, part of the commission is to be not only working on general initiatives and putting together great plans, which these are all really good, but then also to be able to dig into things that are specific to a large amenity, which Braemar fits into. And I just know that there's been discussion at the city council level for some things around Braemar Park and the surrounding area. So I just, I feel like it might get missed, and then I'd hate to see something end up on our plate in 2021 that's similar to the, hey, we're putting a playground in at Fred Richards. So, and I think that this would be, if it's Braemar, it's going to be much more than a playground. It would be something like potentially another sheet of ice or parking, or I don't know. I'm making those things up, but I just think that, to me, I'm fine with staying away from pointed stuff in the initiatives, and if that's the case, but I also don't want us to be left kind of holding the bag at some point down the road, and we weren't really privy or didn't have that in our work plan.
Hey, Perry, didn't City Council appoint some kind of a task force about the Braemar Ice?
No, just to clarify, there's an advocacy group that's kind of formed out of the ICLA Cup group. If you kind of know the folks behind that raise scholarships. We've been having dialogue on them on how to improve user experience and what we can do on ice capacity. Nothing formal at this time. Obviously, those types of items would come before the city in some form, but they're more advocacy ideas at this time. We did bring forward the lighting study and improvements at Courtney Field as kind of an FYI. That'll go in the CIP, whether or not that's funded or not funded. But as far as staff-driven projects, everything that I know of that could occur in that area has gone before you, either in the master plan or kind of the piece we brought last time about field layouts and lighting. Again, that would go through the CIP process. But yes, there's a group out there that's talking about ice, nothing formal at this time.
I mean, to me, it might seem like a good idea that an advocacy group, because I believe the cost of that is, well, it's pretty exorbitant. So an advocacy group building the groundswell for that, or educating the public, or doing their own homework, might be a good thing, because it's going to be a lot of money. I'm not sure it's the purview of this commission to come up with something, a suggestion that might cost $20 to $30 million when we know we don't have the money to pay for it. So I don't feel left out if they're talking with you, Perry. I think that's, as long as they're talking with staff, it's in the beginning stages. And that's probably a long-term, it was probably something that could have moved along faster had we not gone through the pandemic and the economic toll that's taking on cities and states. But that's, as long as they're talking to staff about it, I don't feel like we're being left out. It would be where I'd stand on that.
And just to kind of maybe ease the commission's fears, there's really nothing to report on now because there isn't a project or a project proposal. anything of that magnitude or any other initiatives do come before the city through a process. So when we get to informational items, you'll see there are 2 special project requests that are coming in. They're not on the scale of an advocacy group wanting additional ice. However, those do come and they do go through a city process. So once you can kind of vet them, and we know there's something that we want to bring forward for review, we would do that. We would not intentionally bypass anyone or do that at all. It's just that we do get a lot of requests for a lot of things, and we kind of feel like at an opportune time we do bring those before the city for review. So there's really nothing to worry about at this point, but there is a group out there that are advocates for that. I've often said, you can never build enough ice arenas from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. But on the other hand, we have a duty to kind of vet those things out. And if they do make sense, then bring them forward in a logical manner.
That okay, Matt? Or
I was just trying to create discussion. I'm not married to anything. I have no vested interest in this. I just know that what I've heard, I don't have a skater. I do. He's 7, he's a mite. So we get the ice that they just give us. So there's no, and full transparency, I just am using this as the example. I hear things like when Commissioner Director Vetter talks about a new entrance for Fred Richards, like that's going to come up at some point. And so where's the intersection between, and maybe this is a bigger conversation, but what is the intersection between this commission and those conversations? Are they work plan items, or do they come up and then we discuss as they're presented in a meeting? And I just don't want to continue for us as a collective group who volunteer time and effort to be part of this, because these are the things that we really care about, to not at least follow if there's a process we should be following. There's a lot of things we're voting on tonight. I just want to make sure that we just kind of have everything buttoned up, and so that when this stuff comes to pass, whenever it comes to pass, that we've done exactly what we're supposed to be doing as the lead advocacy group for residents and the intersection between residents and parks for the city of Edina.
I think Commissioner Darlene just made a really good point, and maybe to take that a little bit further, I think there's a difference between the initiatives that the commission wants to work on and what business comes before the commission. And I think those are 2 different things. And I think, revising an entrance to the master plan of the Fred is a business item. People that bring in special project requests, those are business items. But specifically for the work plan, it's what initiatives do you control that you want to go out and work on. And that's, I think, the discussion for tonight. We'll always have unexpected business of when that comes forward. And depending on what CIP projects get funded, that kind of develops that conversation further. I think I've told you a few of these. You went through a very busy time period when you had, 2 master plans to develop, a park master plan to develop, and a strategic plan to work through. So you had a lot of busy items, a golf course task force. So there's a lot of busy items that have been going on. Right now, without any projects truly funded, we're, as far as business items, that would be that next phase of bringing forward when phase 2 of Fred is funded, or a portion of it. Now we bring that forward again. So I think, just to maybe clarify, I think where you're headed is, we've got our work plan initiatives that the commission does, and then we've got business items that we'll bring before you.
Yeah, I'm just writing some notes. I hear Matt, and I'm just trying to. I'm concerned too. I think a lot of it is we have such a comprehensive CIP, and the numbers are they're growing every day, every week, with unfunded items. And I hear, there's certainly discussions going on at the arena, how this all fits eventually, with the ICE project? Do we go referendum? Do we go private funding? Do we have to have a Parks Board foundation, like they have Minneapolis, several places, so we can facilitate the multifaceted funding other than just rely on the CIP process. But yeah, thanks, Matt. I'm also concerned, just from my brief experiences at the golf course, about you hear all these factions of people. Well, they'd like to do this, they want to do that. We'll pay for it, we'll help, and does that come to us? Certainly, I think I look at it as almost, if there's city dollars spent on one of our parks, whatever that may be, then we should have some type of perspective about how that fits in the CIP process. Do we do something and not do something? So I certainly hear you, Matt. So I thank you for
Yeah, I mean, again, and I don't want this to go off too far on a tangent, but like, I think of two projects besides a golf course, right? So when we first started, the group of folks that was with me when we first started on the Park Rec Commission, we ended up with the Winter Wonderland project that didn't end up passing, but that was one of those things where there was some groundswell from a group of folks to try to get this stuff running and stuff like that. And we kind of were, again, it wasn't in our work plan. So just kind of identifying those. The other one was before I started, but the Hornet's Nest, there's an example of private funding that went to create space and do some things to a public amenity, which the only reason I bring that example up is because I think that this is probably what we're looking at again. And so it kind of fits in. So that's why I asked the question, do these things fit in all the initiatives? Because that example I just did fits into probably a couple different ones. That's alternative funding source. That's athletic department, so I think it helps really kind of clear up for me. This is what this document is for and the difference between a business item and a work plan item. So that's really, I guess, what I was hoping for, because I use all those examples as things that we've seen in the recent past. So.
I don't think we turned down any money, but I think one of the as we see perhaps with the end of our relationship at Darden, is that because when you partner with people, sometimes there's very loose ends about that require a lot of effort to clean up. But thanks, Matt, for those comments. Though I mean, it's something that we should all be aware of, I think. I have a list of the 12 of us. We have not assigned any students, but I have Corin. I didn't hear from you about the initiatives.
Chair, I'm not showing her on the participant list anymore, panelist list. I wonder if Corin had to drop.
Pat, is Pat still with us tonight? Any thoughts or desires, Pat, from these 5?
Just to stay with the alternate funding sources.
Which is?
Actually put together a nice little deck for you, Rick, a while back.
I'll put that down, Pat, if I could. Is that number 3? I think I put mine away again, but
Yeah, I think that'd be right.
yep. Perry, were you going to assign the 3 student commissioners? Or
Chair, I think 2 things. I think we could ask Will, who's still in the meeting, if he has a
yeah.
preference for any
Okay.
of those. And then when you're ready, I'll show you what I drafted for the 5th initiative this evening. So maybe we want to hear from Will first.
Will, first of all, welcome to the Park Board. In hearing these and reading of these, any thoughts of where you might like to serve on any of these initiatives?
I think the Braemar commission sounded interesting, just because it had to deal with like hockey and ice and stuff.
And Commissioner Nalowski, could you repeat that? My mic cut out on you a little bit.
Oh, sorry. I think the Braemar commission would be pretty interesting because it has to deal with like hockey and ice and stuff like that. And I just find that interesting. But yeah.
So for the 2021 items, Commissioner Nalowski, are you thinking the proactively connecting with groups because it includes athletic associations, that item?
Yeah.
Okay.
You were going to show us something, Perry, on your screen?
Yes, commissioners, I'll try to share my screen for you. Hopefully once that loads, you can see. So I've created just a 5th initiative for your review this evening. The initiative title we can work on, but the text would be to be intentional on the use of benchmarking to assess progress against strategic objectives, review benchmarks on an annual basis, and evaluate the measurement effectiveness. And the source for that would be the comprehensive guide plan. So the deliverable will be built off of your 2020 initiative number 7 to further develop and evaluate benchmarking of data of the park system. And so far, I just had Commissioner Good down on that. I may have missed folks. So I'll leave that up if anyone had any comments on that wording, or if there's anything else you'd like to see.
Wording looks good to me, Perry.
Great.
Thumbs up from Commissioner Darlene as well.
Greg, did you have a comment just now?
No, Rick, I was just saying the wording looks good to me on the initiative.
Okay.
Okay, I'll return you to your, hopefully return you to your normal view now.
I have, if I could just, I have everybody's name in front of me. Greg, I have 2, 4, and 5. Yes.
That's correct, Rick.
Pat, I have 3. Pat, I have 3 for you. Julie, I put for 1. Matt, I have 4.
That's correct.
I should have said Matthew. Matt, I have you for 2. Delene?
Yeah, that works.
Thanks. Corin, we'll assign her. Eileen, I have you for 3.
Yes.
And Mr. Miller, I have you for 1.
Correct.
Okay. Perry had suggested that we vote on these if there's no other questions or changes as being our initiatives for 2021, or do you have something?
Chair, I was just going to say one other item we had talked about was you can have up to 4 commissioners per work item based on quorum rules. So if there are additional ones people wanted to work on, or else if you feel, whatever you feel your group size effectiveness might be, is up to you, but just we can have up to 4.
Hey, Rick, I can help Julie on number 1.
Okay. The commissioners can let us know post tonight, can't they, Director?
That's correct.
Yeah. So.
I think the things we would like to get tonight are the suggestions on the initiative type. And if there's any deliverable that you would like, or budget for when Chairitis presents this to the City Council on October 6th.
Well, if we go back to number 1, I would, to me, it appears to be a project, I suppose. Is this almost a one-time project?
Perry, you're suggesting the 4 different initiative types, but that I always saw that as a, oh, I see, initiative type, yeah, project, ongoing, or annual, and then the council does their charge of 1 through 4, right?
Yep.
Yep, that's correct.
Yep, no, I agree. It's a project.
Number 2. Well, my suggestion would be ongoing. I mean, this would be something that we'd want to do from now on.
I think we could structure it that way, Rick. If we develop this into some kind of a listening approach or connecting with the community, building off of the neighborhood nodes, et cetera, that could probably be ongoing.
As a staff perspective, I think we'll be surprised at how many stakeholder groups there are. And that could take some time to get through them all.
Right.
Number 3. Is this, what I consider mostly the CIP work? In the past, has this been a yearly project for the park board to work on? Or has it just gotten to be more critical at this point? I'm kind of mixed between a singular project, which is going to encompass a lot of work, both certainly on the staff, and is it something that we should this should almost be an annual or ongoing type work for us.
I would recommend, Chair, to maybe make it manageable for this year is to make it a project. And then once you kind of look at what those opportunities are that the council should consider, I think that might lead into additional work of how they might require assistance to implement some of those opportunities. So I kind of see as if you kind of take this as a manageable chunk is to say, let's make it a project, find these approaches to the funding, what the pros and cons are, and what a recommendation might be of, again, I hate to overuse it, but tools in the toolbox, and then get that in front of them. That's most likely going to lead to additional work that might take you down a different path. But I think for the first portion of this might be a project.
On initiative 4, to me, it almost has the feeling of ongoing, but I think I don't know if the past boards have spent a lot of time here, but it certainly is a substantial project that we should be doing.
Yeah, Rick, if I think of this as far as kind of categorizing, which I think we started to do some work on this year, and then prioritizing, it feels like a project, but then it's an ongoing effort to try to get capital to do something about it, right?
I agree.
At least it's kind of a snapshot in time of what do we see today and how do we prioritize it and then turn it over to the CIP.
I agree. That's thanks, Greg. And number 5, the metrics. That's almost ongoing, I would think. How are we doing? Particularly if there's major changes. If we carry forward with some of the master plan work on those 2 places in particular, what type of metrics do we have in place, and are they adequate, or should they be expanded, I suppose?
I'd agree with you on that, Rick. I think that's the way we structured that, is to create an ongoing effort.
And I'm glad that you reminded us to include this in one. Hearing no other comments or changes, I think what we'd like to do tonight is vote on these, that these 5 items should be the majority of our 2021 work plan.
I'd offer a motion that staff finalizes the 5 initiatives that we have and that we pass them along to City Council as a recommended 2021 work plan.
Second.
Any further discussion, or hearing none? Perry, should we do a roll call on this? Certainly.
Thank you, Chair. I'll do one now. Commissioner Good? Commissioner Miller?
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson, but I think she dropped off. Commissioner Willett?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McCauley? Commissioner McCauley?
Aye.
Commissioner Deline?
Aye.
Commissioner Itis?
Aye.
Commissioner Doskich?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Item 7. Member comments. Any member comments tonight?
Yeah, Rick, I'd have a couple.
Sure.
Number one, just update. I utilized our disc golf course at Cornelia this past month. Actually, the first time I've been out to do that was given a gift with some more professional discs. So not just one Frisbee, but had 3 and have to learn how to use them. But just a suggestion, Perry, for staff, and I don't know how much work this would take or where it's on our list, but I thought we could consider some simple signage to help direct play. As I said, this is the first time I've used it, so a bit of even marking the starting point and directional hints from hole to hole might be helpful there. It's clear that there's some things still in the ground from when it was initially set up, but it might just be something we could take a look at to see if our own staff could somehow do a bit of a refresher to make it a little bit easier to find your way around it for those people that haven't used it before. Second, I had a question, and maybe Rick, you might even know this too. Played golf at Braemar just on the back 9 this weekend, and I've had a couple people ask me about what's happening underneath the blue tarp between holes 16 green and 12 tee, I think it is. So I didn't have a direct answer, but I know the tarp's been there for quite some time, so I wondered if there was something specific that we were working on.
Yes, Commissioner Good, the superintendent and the staff are actually building a new tee box for the par 3 for number 17 that could be used for tournaments or different challenges to give the par 3s additional opportunities for different distances. So it won't be ready this year, but in the future, that will be another option for us on that par 3 to make that longer, or if we decide to host tournaments, etc., gives a little bit more of flexibility to use that spot up there.
Well, I personally carded a 5 coming out of the bunker on that hole, so I don't need any additional challenge, but I understand the direction. Thank you.
If you got a 5 on 17, you got to get some different clubs.
No, I just got to use them better, Rick.
Okay. Yeah. Don't worry, I've gotten a couple double bogeys there this year already too. It's called a sucker pin because they put it about 3 yards over the bunker.
It's exactly what happened to me. I ended up in the bunker and didn't get out of it well. So.
Yeah.
All right, that's all I had. Thanks.
Any other comments? I have a couple, but I'll wait for mine. Mine are a couple things, and some of you might have seen this. Braemar, a junior golf program. Jay Meyerhoff is the pro, and he came from Rush Creek. He got an award this year from the PGA of America for having the top junior program in Minnesota. And he also has now one of the largest in the country in terms of junior golf. And you think of a place where we can only play probably 7 months out of the year. I helped, he had his first junior academy tournament August 22nd. And I volunteered, I don't know, from 8 to 5:30. I had my picture taken with Jay, and the first golfer that went off, I think his first name was, Zachary or something. 4 years old. He came up to about my knee, and when I shook his hand, his bag was actually dragging on the ground. His bag was actually taller than he was. So great success on the junior program. It's just turned out spectacular. That's certainly, in terms of our entity there, our enterprise there has been very successful. In fact, I think when the general manager comes to speak this fall, we're going to see, I think, probably a record year for the golf course, in spite of all this distancing. But those are my 2 comments. If anybody else has any, if not, we'll have Perry do his informational items.
Sorry, I just wanted to jump. I remember I had one when a member I just mentioned something. So I went to the golf course this weekend and just was curious to understand the staffing for the phone. I was taking my son to hit a bunch of range balls. I called 7 times. It almost felt like either A, I was going to voicemail, or someone was picking up the phone and hanging it up. Ended up at Glen Lake and walked in, got a bucket of balls, and we were on the course in 3 minutes. So I'm just using that as an example. I'm sure potentially other folks had the same issue because the range was wide open. So I just was curious, Labor Day weekend, if we had a staffing issue, because it feels like if we're pushing people to use the phone for tee times and range, that we should potentially have that staffed.
Yeah, I could let the director comment. Mine, I know during the very busy season, right up until a couple of weeks ago, they were taking 1,500 calls a day. That's not an excuse, but I think plus our phone system probably is not new there. It's something that is, just staffed by a bunch of people. So Perry can correct me, but I think we're certainly entertaining a new system because in my mind, we're going to have some type of continuation of what's gone on this year. It is, by not having access to the clubhouse to make reservations and pay for your golf, it is, it's cumbersome, but it's something I think, I don't like to hear what Matt just said, but at the same time, we're overloaded. I mean, we're doing, 500 rounds a day. So, I mean, it's, I think it's a work in progress, hopefully out there. You want to comment more, Perry?
Yeah, Commissioner Darlene, I apologize for that experience. We have had the clubhouse closed. That's been kind of a safety protocol for our staff on a limited basis. We recently did switch our phone lines to an ability to queue people, where, and I don't know which method it was when you called in. Unfortunately, our prior system was your call would get answered when the next available staff person would be, their phone would be open. So you could call and not be on hold and get taken right away versus someone that was on hold for a few minutes would go back into the queue because of the way the phone system rolled. The new way it's set up is supposed to be that callers go into a queue and are answered in the order that they called. So I'll have to check with the general manager on ensuring that system's working. But as far as I know, we are trying to have adequate staff levels to answer those phones. Again, it's been for the safety of our staff. During the pandemic that we've tried to limit access to the clubhouse for those experiences and a roll to the phones. For the future, we are looking at a new software system for reservations and payments to be able to do that online a whole lot easier. One of the implications of having a player's card and multiple rates because of a player's card is we can't just do that in our current system. So while we're trying to learn through the pandemic, it's also given us opportunity to say maybe we should do things differently. And switching systems was on our radar, and we hope to implement that for the next coming year. But I'll check in with the general manager on what occurred over Labor Day weekend.
Any other comments, or you can go ahead with your informational items?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll just give a couple of quick information items that we do have in your packet this evening. The first is we did host an online registration. It was unique. We did kind of retool a lot of our fall classes and sessions based on what we could offer, what the participant size would be. We did full day. Our first day registrations was about 660 folks. We weren't sure how that would go without a printed directory. While it probably isn't anything we would do in the future, not having some sort of a directory, we want to really look at the expense of a directory versus how our registrations go and what mechanisms can we do to market it. So we felt this year leading in, If we did print a directory, it would probably be out of date by the time we got to registration with all of the lead times. So we're pretty satisfied with how fall went. We're still taking registrations. We do have wait lists for a lot of classes. Especially, Chair, I just mentioned the golf program. That is one where we do have a lot of waiting lists on. So all in all, there are still some openings. If people want to log on to our website, edinamn.gov, they can look for different classes to still register. We did provide you a little bit of an update. We were successful in receiving some grants that we implemented this summer. Those are being funded by Three Rivers Park District through a Hennepin County allotment of the CARES program. Centennial Lakes, since your last meeting, we have had a lot of use on the putting course and the paddleboat rentals. The expansion of the paddleboat rentals was in fact due to one of those grants that we did receive. So, if you haven't been to the farmers market, you've got a couple of Thursdays left. This year that has been held at Roslyn Park. We've actually had very good attendance. It's much different than the experience you had if you went to Centennial, where, prior years walking around Centennial was more of that social park experience. At Roslyn, it's a true market where we don't necessarily have all the social aspects, but we do have all the quality vendors. So it's more of a market shopping experience rather than a park experience. Edinburgh Park, we are open for limited amenities there. The track, the pool, and some of the fitness apparatus for our members. The project on the front entrance plaza does continue. We've poured a lot of concrete in the last week and a half and 2 weeks, so that is starting to take shape. Braemar Field, we are planning to reopen that on September 19th. That will begin our fall season for use. At this time, we'll probably not offer the walking amenities until later. We're going to ease in with the associations for use starting in September, a couple of weeks from now, and then slowly expand that as we can. A major change at the Braemar Arenas, we are starting to offer adult and adult open hockey beginning on the 9th. That does cost $5. More information on the Braemar website. The Golf Dome slated to open September 14th. That will only occur until November 1 from 1 o'clock in the afternoon until 9 p.m. The outdoor range will still be available through then. And actually weather dependent. Hopefully we get a lot more fall than we have right now. There's going to be a pretty dedicated COVID management plan at the Golf Dome as well. So we want patrons to check that out before arrival. And then our Art and Park project. Some of the swales have been replanted through the watershed district. And if you've been out recently, the lawn and landscaping work is occurring right now. We had a lot of concerns about the condition of the area where turf was to be established. That was an ongoing concern. The contractor did retill that subsurface. They picked and removed rocks and debris out of that area, and they will be amending the soil this week and adding to that, and then seeding that area. It'll actually be hydro seeding it this year, so we should get grass to pop very quickly on there. So we're continually working on that area. Next week, weather dependent, the parking lot at Bredesen Park will be rehabilitated. We will have signage up. Again, we're hoping for September 15th or 16th, but that'll kind of depend on the weather. And then the last, I kind of mentioned it earlier, your October agenda, we're hoping to have 2 special project requests in front of you. One is to add bocce ball courts to the system, and the other one is to provide an additional outdoor skate park. So if you remember the special project guidelines that we worked on earlier, those residents have submitted those requests through that process, and we'll get them on for review if the schedules work out for them. So that's all I had on a informational items update. The council agenda items quickly that were in your packet. We signed a new lease with Breakaway Academy to operate at Braemar. Obviously the new student commissioners comprehensive guide plan was finally approved. And not necessarily related to this commission's work. However, their work occurs within our park system. The Arts and Culture Commission and the Human Rights Commission, or Human Rights and Relations Commission, worked on an initiative on art and decor decisions that will carry into the public art program. And then as well, the ACC did have their 3-year public art program approved by the City Council. Again, the majority of that public art is within our park system, primarily at Centennial Lakes. I'll continue on the way through. Your next upcoming meetings, your next regular meeting will be Tuesday, October 13th. We'll verify if it's an in-person or virtual before that. Administration is updating that on a month-to-month basis. And then just prior to that, on October 6th, Chairitis will present your ideas for the 2021 work plan for the commission. That's all I have for you this evening.
Any other items by the commissioners? If not, I'll ask for a motion and a second for adjournment, and then the director can take roll call.
So moved.
Second.
Let's run through these quick. Commissioner Good,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Willett,
Aye.
Commissioner McCauley,
Aye.
Commissioner Darlene,
Aye.
Commissioner Itis,
Aye.
Commissioner Doskich.
Aye.
Your meeting is adjourned.
Very good. Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you all.
Thanks all.
Thank you all.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Thanks.